Hello and welcome to the 22nd episode of the Bulletin Podcast. This is me, Smriti Rai, your host for today, and today we have Dr. Maria Cecilia Oliveira as our guest speaker. The topic of discussion today will be about conservation of Amazon and the politics around it. Our guest speaker is the head of the Transdisciplinary Research Group, Democratic Governance and Ecopolitical Transformations at IASS Potsdam. She is currently working on a transdisciplinary case study in the Amazon Basin, and the research areas include rights of nature, environmental crisis, indigenous activism, knowledge production, populism, and climate policy development in the context of the Paris Agreement. At the Willy Brandt School, Dr. Maria Cecilia Oliveira is instructing the course Environmental Conflict and Conflict Resolution for this winter semester.
We are living in an increasingly polarized world.
My administration has accomplished more than almost any administration.
We must begin now.
Welcome to the Bulletin Podcast.
Hello and welcome everyone to our newest episode of the Bulletin Podcast. Today we have as our guest Professor Dr. Maria Cecilia Oliveira. We are thankful that she accepted our request. Welcome, Dr. Oliveira.
Thank you so much for your invite. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and today for our podcast, we are hoping to discuss a little more about the Amazon rainforest and the political dimension or the effect it has in the conservation and everything. So without any further delay, I would like to move on to the first question. Why is the Amazon so important, the Amazon rainforest?
Yes, good question. So, of course, when we think about the Amazon today, we even think about this as a planetary territory, I used to say, because this importance and connection with the Earth system. So, for example, the Amazon is the single largest remaining tropical rainforest
Mm-hmm.
in the world. It houses at least 10% of the world's known biodiversity,
Mm-hmm.
and its river accounts for 16% of the world's total river discharge into the oceans. And it's also a significant carbon sink that collects CO2 and a carbon source
Mm-hmm.
also, unfortunately, when we talk about tipping points that emits carbon due to forest fires, agriculture, and extractivism in the forest. So just for these reasons, we see that plays a very important role in international agendas like the climate change agenda, and we just have the COP. So one of the big themes was the Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
But I need to confess with you when when we discuss about the Amazon and is connected with this word saving,
Mm-hmm.
that makes me a little bit critical.
Mm-hmm.
Also because, of course, when we think of genealogy of power relations in the Amazon
Mm-hmm.
and these colonial connections, we always have someone trying to save the
Yeah.
best of something.
Uh-huh.
And that's why I think also for uh, researchers and people trying to build up critical takes and new avenues to look at the Amazon today in the
Mm-hmm.
political sphere. I think also we need to try to identify some elements that are normalized, like these savior discourses. I'm Brazilian, and
Mm-hmm.
we just have the elections. We uh, yeah, we will get a new president from January, and the last one was calling himself always as a messiah,
Mm-hmm.
trying to
Yeah.
save everything, but really damaging the forest, the rainforest.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, one of the things also we need to ask ourselves, it's how to place these civil wars
Mm-hmm.
discourses today,
Yeah.
and
What
how to change
exactly?
them.
I would like to ask one more question. Like, what exactly happened? Like, in the past president Bolsonaro, of course, um, what policies or what initiatives did he bring so that kind of affected the Amazon rainforest? I think it's nice for the listeners to know
Yeah,
more about it a
unfortunately,
little
it
bit.
was like a very difficult 4 years for all the environmentalists and or local communities living in this region,
Mm-hmm.
because Bolsonaro's constituency it's known for being those very based on agribusiness and trying to expand illegal mining, and on the other hand, also we had uh, we had the terrible environmental ministers
Mm-hmm.
that really killed the institutions and all the protections that we had at place already
Mm-hmm.
before. So of course, these 4 years was very difficult, not just for the increase of deforestation,
Mm-hmm.
but also for all the researchers and people work on the ground, dealing with all this unfortunately very backlash
Mm-hmm.
of the current government that is finalizing this term now in December.
Yeah, but I mean, yes, the rate of deforestation increased, and I guess mining and everything. But what are there any existing policies that are still protecting the Amazon rainforest, or
Mhm.
could you?
When we talk about the Amazon rainforest, we are talking about like a complex and huge
Yeah,
ecosystem that is not to just connect with Brazil, but to have at least eight
Peru. Yeah.
countries that are hosting the rainforest. And of course, like each country has their national laws and environmental protection at
Mm-hmm.
place. But I think what I would like to highlight, for example, that is a novelty,
Mm-hmm.
it's in the case of Colombia
Mm-hmm.
that they have, for example, in 2018, granted rights to the Amazon ecosystem. So,
Mm-hmm.
like for Colombia, for example, Amazon has rights. You have at place rights of nature. It's the case also, for example, for Ecuador and Bolivia. They have
Yeah.
rights in their constitution. But unfortunately, of course, like it's very nice to have this on paper,
Mm-hmm.
but to put in practice, it's another story. And
Mm-hmm.
there has been a fight in Ecuador and Bolivia. And
Mm-hmm.
now let's see how that will have a difference with Colombia, of
Mm-hmm.
course. But I think these new initiatives shows how today the forest and the nature in these countries are targeted really as a huge political agenda that
Mm-hmm.
is really like even pushing a change in their constitutions, and how then we frame that in law and activism also.
Mm-hmm. How is it in Brazil then? Like, how much of political activism is going on to save the rainforest, or
Yeah.
trying to make some push some changes in the constitution?
Yes. Well, the rights of nature in Brazil is still something emerging.
Mm-hmm.
There is now some discussions and the activists and the associations trying to bring the theme to the
Mm-hmm.
country, but it's not very prominent like in Ecuador, Bolivia, or Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like the history of the activist movement in the Amazon, it's known since the 80s, and
Mm-hmm.
were those that really pushed for more engagement and different approach to the forest. That is really known. And I think like with these hard 4 years that we had,
Mm-hmm.
in particular in Brazil, you can see again some of these movements creating more um, articulations, and also putting the agenda again in the center
Yes.
of the political debate, not just nationally but also internationally.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think the recent election of Lula da Silva as the president would affect the Amazon in some ways? Are you hoping for some positive changes?
Well, I'm as a researcher and working directly with the theme of the Amazon. Of course, I'm always like trying to track and map what is going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the biggest event so far has been this COP27 that we
Mm-hmm.
just have in Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
and in Brazil or even internationally. The most known word that in case of Brazil, of course,
Mm-hmm.
was Brazil is back.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Lula was very smart in bringing the Amazon as
Mm-hmm.
the hook to kind of
Yes.
connect the Brazil with these multilateral avenues, and he
Mm-hmm.
used it very smartly how
Mm-hmm.
then to bring the Amazon as the connection that could relate Brazil again with many head of states. He had so many different meetings, like with Macron, or even like
Mm-hmm.
connections with Germany, and was announced already. For example, the reconnection with the Amazon Fund
Mm-hmm.
that was blocked
Mm-hmm.
since
2017, I guess.
yes,
Yeah.
because 2000, with the big fires of the Amazon, especially in 2018,
Uh-huh.
oh 2019, 2019, first year of Bolsonaro in his term, we had this they stopped then
Yeah.
the Amazon Fund, and now they are really eager to start that again. Lula also already announced that he's going to negotiate to bring the COP to the
Mm-hmm.
Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
So probably COP 30 will be held in the Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the important agendas also that he was negotiating is to direct this alliance between Congo and Indonesia,
Mm-hmm.
because with Brazil, Congo, Indonesia, they are the biggest owners of rainforest
Yes.
in the world, and it's an idea that was placed already before, but he also like highlighted this kind of initiative that it's in his priority agenda for
Yeah.
now. So like was he's not of course he takes he starts his term just in January, but
Yes.
he's already like negotiating and putting back Brazil with these multilateral
Mm-hmm.
initiatives, exactly with the theme of the Amazon. This is, I think, the first time that a president start his term exactly connected to the
Uh-huh.
Amazon
Yeah.
as a
What?
agenda.
Yeah. While I think this is more of a hopeful picture because of him engaging with the international community, and then now I think this takes me back to the first question I was asking, like, what does, like, how should we be seeing the whole theme of saving the Amazon? How could the civil society, researchers, government see it so that we can actually make a difference in trying to save the Amazon rainforest?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Again, like a saving for me.
Yes.
It's already like as a critical scholar for me. I think like the role now. Well, it will be not easy.
Mm-hmm.
We know that the at least 60% of the Amazon is located in Brazil, so Brazil
Mm-hmm.
has really like a leadership role in
Mm-hmm.
the entire region.
Mm-hmm.
And even if we had the Lula now, was a very tight win,
Yes, it was.
and also many of the Bolsonaro constituency was elected, so you have a very conservative Congress,
Mm-hmm.
and now you need to observe how that is going to be in practice. And but of course, like for researchers, civil society, grassroots movements, I think more than save the Amazon is really to identify the normalization of exploitation and
Mm-hmm.
activities that really limits us to bring protection at first place. And let's not forget that the Amazon region is one of the most deadly places.
Yes,
Many
it is.
human rights defenders are murdered
Mm-hmm.
because they are defending their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And this is historically something that has happened before
Mm-hmm.
right wing governments, or now with so huge conservative constituencies. So then we need to very carefully to try to identify what are the elements that really block us to have this first the nature protected, but
Mm-hmm.
also the people living there, that they can enjoy and have a health environment,
Yes.
that they can also fight international corporations, and
Mm-hmm.
when their state is really like giving more room for this kind of exploitation, how they will then fight back against
Yeah.
this kind of things. So more than saving are more like like how to create ruptures that
Mm-hmm.
we can really have different dimensions of these power relations that unfortunately, of course, it's always like the local communities, the indigenous communities, that are those suffering the everyday
Yeah.
effects of destroying or damaging the nature around the rainforest.
Yeah, and a little more on international context, like how do you think can the international community support or the governments from other
Yeah,
countries? Yeah.
yes. So, like, let's see. As I mentioned, for example, with the Amazon Fund or new initiatives that you can put at place practice that can really transform the societies living in these arenas, but also like how many of these countries track their own economic activities
Mm-hmm.
in these regions. Maybe it's something that we should complain about and observe and ask from the international community this
Mm-hmm.
commitment as well. It's not just financing things in the
Yeah.
region and think about normal avenues of development cooperations or things like that,
Uh-huh.
but also how to hold some chains or
Accountability.
financial circuits
Mm-hmm.
that many of European countries or first world countries are responsible for that also.
Yes. Um, I think now we are almost to the end of our podcast, but before we wrap up everything, is there anything that you would want to say as a summing up your opinion or
About the
yeah about the how conservation is taking place in the Amazon forest and I
Okay,
think and,
so I think like one interesting element that is connected even with my own research
mm-hmm,
today is really like to understand different aesthetics or epistemologies of how maybe you could see nature and experience nature.
mm-hmm,
So I know that this podcast is focused on the William Brandt community of
yes
students and researchers, professors, but mostly for the students. So maybe what I would like to share with you, and I would love that maybe later have a coffee
yes
and ask
sure
you then your feedback or opinion, to observe some culture and elements that are produced in this area that is connected with the environmental movements and this kind of different epistemologies that I was telling to you. And
mm-hmm,
for the broad public, we have lots of movies
mm-hmm,
and interesting media material that
mm-hmm,
can give you not just a trip to the Amazon, but also invite you to think in different things. Like, for example, we have a movie that won the Panorama Berlinale, that is
mm-hmm,
The Last Forest. That was a movie made by David Kopenawa,
mm-hmm,
that it's a Yanomami shaman and also kind of philosopher, published already a book,
mm-hmm,
um The Falling Sky, together with an anthropologist. So, and they are always producing interesting things and media material. So I think it's something worth to take a look. Or maybe another movie tip
uh-huh
is
that's
The Territory.
uh-huh
It's a movie also talking about land use and the conflicts to indigenous communities in Rondonia to protect their lands. So
mm-hmm,
here are my tips because of course I don't have answers. I'm looking for them as well, and sometimes different ways of doing research also help us to open our eyes and commit with a specific agenda. So these are my tips.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maria Cecilia Oliveira, for your time and great inputs. And thank you so much to the listeners. I hope we all had something to learn, something good to listen. And we look forward to meeting you all in our next episodes. Goodbye.